It's time for the chip race.
We're joined now by the man who, with 42 wins, has the biggest number of live victories in English poker history. He's coming up on a double century of cashes and is about to pass Dave the Devilfish Ulliott as Britain's most numerous casher. He is a former UKIPT Player of the Season and four-time APT Player of the Year. He is the 2012 APPT Grand Final champion. It can only be Sam Razavi. Sam, welcome to the chip race.
Oh, cheers. Sitting there enjoying that intro, I was like basking in the ambience.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. I penned that myself. Want to kick off actually by going way back into your past. In 2006, you starred in the British comedy film Pleasure Marriage. It is because of your acting chops that we purposely selected you to be on the same episode as Jennifer Tilly, who's going to be with us later on tonight. She has an Oscar nomination. Why don't you?
Well, I'm glad you said when you said you're going back into my past. I'm glad you stopped at 2006. I was getting concerned, but yeah. Well, basically, I started acting after. I did a few jobs literally after leaving drama school, and one of the first jobs I did, some guy obviously had to introduce me to poker, and I got involved online one of my weekends away from the tour, and well, the rest is history. You know, I got lucky, as most of I think they used to call me a Terry Bad Regfish, bum hunting. I'm not ashamed to admit it. The heads up cash games when it was a gold mine back then, and yeah. I mean, it still remains something that I really want to get back into, but for now, you know, needs must.
When you hear actors who play poker being interviewed, the focus always tends to be on how live play is like performing, bluffing's like acting. A crossover I know you've pointed out is how the technique of learning scripts by heart trained your memory. Could you elaborate on this?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually having a chat with my wife the other day, and we were talking about stuff that she was kind of saying, things that. Okay, we're having an argument. She's actually sat across from me, so, and she was like, "You remember stuff from like X amount of years ago?" And I said, "Yeah, it's because of all the training with acting and learning script. And there's plenty of stuff in my life that I'd like to forget, but sadly I can't. I mean, I think all that training has really helped me. It's helped me like in live games when I come across opponents, I immediately remember like hands I've played against them like 2-3 years ago. So it's kind of weird. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, my wife similarly always complains about how good my memory is, that I remember stuff from years and years ago, but it still doesn't stop her from challenging my memory on every point. It's like, no, that's not right. In 2012, you became UKIPT Cork champion, but more importantly, you wore that silly leprechaun hat and showed us an Irish accent that probably explains why you never got cast in an Irish film. How much do you think the lucky leprechaun contributed to your outrageous runner suck out for nearly all the chips short-handed against Myrtle Moo Mulsow? And more seriously, how big was the result to you at the time?
Yeah, the runner. The runner was obviously what's his name had the ace king David. Who's the guy that came second? David O'Connor. Yeah,
that's right.
You know, I thought. I got a bit of abuse like people do after, you know. I was quite surprised that some people came online and are like, "Don't you dare take the piss out of the Irish again," and all this, and I thought, I wasn't trying to you know, these tiny leprechaun hats are on sale as far as the eye could see outside the venue. I thought, you know, it can't be that offensive. And I just thought it was kind of cute, the small hat, and then another guy. It was one of my first interviews first features in one of the poker magazines or whatever. They said, "Oh, this is how he's going to be remembered as this guy that wore a silly hat." But I mean, in either case, I'm pretty sure. I remember now. I'll just quickly go over it. I think my luck came from a taxi driver that dropped me and my brother, and my mum was there as well, off for day 3, I think. And we just started chatting away, and then at the end, he was a really nice guy, and he just turned around and said, "You know what?" I have to say it in an Irish accent. My best attempt at one, anyway. He said, "You know what? I wish you the best of luck. I really hope you win it. I really hope you win it. I wish you the best of luck." And I promised that if I did, I'd find him and reward him with X percentage. But thankfully I've conveniently the memory didn't clip back in when it mattered. But I always remember that conversation because I don't know. I think I always, whenever I'm going for a day 2 or day 3 or a pivotal day in a tournament, I always make sure I tip everyone, the taxi drivers. I believe in like karma and this good forces around you. So I make sure everyone that comes into contact with me is not like cursing me because that guy didn't give me a tip or this guy's this or that. I like to tip everyone and try and get all that good karma around me. So yeah.
And you moved out to the Philippines not long after, and you've been crushing the live scene all over Asia since. I remember we played at the same day one table at the UKIPT Dublin that Kevin Killeen won. You arrived late and immediately freaked me out by telling me that you dreamt we would be on the same table. Do you dream about many poker players, and does dream clairvoyance help explain the incredible amount of success you've enjoyed in Asia?
I remember, I think we had a hand actually. You had aces, I had jacks, I think,
That's right,
or
yeah.
queens, and I tried to play it tricky, and then you lost, as you do. But yeah, I don't. What I do have though is I always have these recurring dreams about acting where I'm going on stage and I can't remember any words or anything, and I'm kind of glad that I don't get haunted by poker in my dreams, because there was a time when I was really into chess and I couldn't go to sleep at night. Keep me up for 2-3 hours thinking knight to c3, rook to this, that to the other. So I'm glad, having relied on poker for 12, 13 years or whatever it is now, I'm glad I don't really dream about poker as much.
You recently did a Q&A with Lee Davey for his poker routine series. In it you said that the only poker tool you've ever used is caffeine. You've previously likened HUDs to having the cheat codes for your old Super Nintendo games. Is not using them a personal preference or more of a moral position?
I mean, I always battle back and forth with myself about poker, because part of the reason I don't use them is because I think, well, that I can't go into a live game and click a button and, drag up the history of how this guy's played for the last X amount of years. And forgive my ignorance as well, because I haven't really looked into it enough to actually maybe be a legitimate voice on the issue. But part of it is definitely from a moral standpoint. And also, to be 100%, I have to be 100% honest, it's also laziness. I mean, if I wasn't so lazy, I might have actually tried to figure out, one look at all those tiny numbers and I'm like, God, I'm never going to get that. So I don't know if I'd shift my morals aside if I had the time and patience to figure out exactly how to use it.
One other thing is, well, you're pretty atypical for a pro these days in that you're actually on record as saying that you don't really study, at least not in an applied way. What qualities do you think you possess that have helped you to crush in an increasingly tough environment, apart from the lucky leprechaun, obviously?
Yeah, I've still got him, actually. I make sure Seamus is tucked away safely in the attic at home with my mum collects all my trophies there. So that wasn't a brag, by the way. But I think the best thing, actually, honestly, is that I saw a flaw in a lot of my friends that I think these days they could have gone on to destroy. Because back then, when I barely knew really or had the patience for tournament poker, they were running deep, in loads of stuff. But I think a big problem that a lot of poker players have, if they can't look at their play and say, I made a mistake. They can't admit to mistakes. A lot of the times when, like, a friend would tell me, what do you think of this hand? And that's as far as our study went, is discussing hands for a few minutes. And if you'd ever suggest, like, oh, well, maybe you could have done this. No. And suddenly, I've seen it in a lot of players, suddenly they're a master of all outcomes. But if I did this, he would have done this. If I did that, this person would have done that. But I would have got the chips in anyway, blah, blah, blah. And instead of trying to analyze your game and improve it, you'd wash over it by justifying the play in some way. So you're blocking yourself there.
Yeah, for myself, I had a conversation about this on Twitter recently. Somebody asked me how much I studied, and I realized that my study has actually increased over the years rather than decreased, but it's because online has gotten so much tougher that I kind of have to. Like, I could get away with just 3 or 4 hours study a week at the start when I was playing online, but these days I feel like I have to put in 20 hours to kind of like stay even level with the curve, never mind ahead of the curve. In August 2012, you won the ANZPT APPT Grand Final in Melbourne for 325k in Aussie dollars, but how you got there and how it all panned out is a pretty funny story. Could you tell us the story of how you landed your biggest ever score?
Oh, I mean, that was the most ridiculous. I mean, it was crazy. I try and cut it as short as possible. I was playing the APT in Mauritius, and it's funny how things just fit into place. The fact that they had a tournament in Mauritius, in that time zone, that when I was had my off time, and all the time on most of the tour, all the APT events start in the afternoon. In this particular case, they started in the evening. So sitting around, I just opened the laptop and checked out to see what's going on Stars, and they were running satellites to the ANZPT. And it's highly unlikely, if I was anywhere else in the world at that time, I would have flicked on that laptop and been in that time zone to play those tournaments. So I played one satellite to it, got heads up against, he was a well-known fish, I can't remember the username, and I had like a 10 to 1 chip lead, and I lost for the package. So on tilt, I would go and grind those satellites. Anyway, I won the package the next day. When I went to get my flight from Mauritius, I'd booked some nonsense via Paris because I couldn't get to. I don't know the reason why, but I get to the airport and basically the flight's overbooked. There's like 7 people in line that are waiting and arguing at the counter because they were there before me, so they're on the waiting list or whatever it is. So I go up and I'm explaining, I've paid for the hotel, I paid my flights, I paid the entry to this tournament, and I'm like, shit, I'm gonna lose a chunk of cash just doing this, and I'm gonna be stranded in Mauritius. Not that that's a bad thing, but after arguing with this one attendant for about 20 minutes, half an hour, she says, okay. I think I'd put my bags in, and then they told me it was overbooked. So she says, okay, come with me, come round here. She goes round and she prints off a boarding pass out of view of everyone else because they're all in line and they should have been first. She gives that to me, and just as she's handing me the boarding pass, my luggage comes back because obviously they're overbooked. So then I'm like, oh shit. She said, well, you have to go. I said, look, why don't I just take it on the plane? So I got the luggage on the plane. I didn't have to wait for my luggage at the other end. Managed to get to Melbourne, fall asleep, crash out, wake up probably 4 hours into day 2. And I can't remember who was the card room manager at the time. He messages me, I think Christian maybe, and he said, Sam, are you in Melbourne or what? You qualified and you're blinding out. And obviously I jump up, 4 hours into this tournament, go in there, I've blinded off like a third of my stack or however much it was. I'm sat there saying, damn, why did she get me onto that flight? I could have been in Mauritius in the sun relaxing. And then I just went on a pretty sick run, and it was, everything really panned out perfectly. And the final bit, I got heads up against really nice guy. I think it was his first tournament. The only reason he was playing it is because he's qualified for something else, which was like a satellite to the Aussie Millions. I think his name's Keith Walker, if I remember. We got heads up and we discussed like deals and chops and whatnot, and things had gone back and forth. There was a load of nonsense with that, which it will take too long to explain. But we end up getting heads up, and I was like, I really like this guy. I've got, I think, 2 to 1 chip lead, but I do a deal with him just based on how he, it was the first time he's played a tournament, but we had some great rapport. He was a really lovely guy. But just when I'm about to discuss that, bam, they deal me King 10 of spades. And my brother, when I made the final of the Aussie Millions main event, it's always stuck in my mind. He said, don't fold King 10 suited. It's his favourite hand. And I folded it. I folded it in a hand where I would have, Randy Dorfman would have made the nut straight, and I would have gone run around a house. And the way it played out, check, bet on the turn, bet on the river, I would have had a ton of chips. So basically, I look down and I've got King 10 suited. I open, he just shoves all in, and he's really tight. So I know I could be destroyed. I just snapped it off immediately. I said, I can't lose. There's no way I'm going to lose this hand. I've got King 10 suited. I mean, how can I lose? And I turned a flush anyway. So yeah, it was.
What did he have? Did you bad beat him?
He had jacks.
You're such a fish, Sam.
Turn spade, but the river just to rub it in was the jack of spades as well. So.
Yeah, I've heard of people making loose calls because it's their favourite hand, but this is the first time I've heard somebody call because it's their brother's favourite hand.
I know. I mean, but it was
heads up for like 150 grand or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, I literally would have been giving. I mean, looking back on it, it's nonsense. But I thought that hand, that King 10 of clubs, on the Aussie Millions, I did look down, and when it went raise, I was like, my brother told me not to fold this hand. So obviously I folded it. So I was like, I'm not making that mistake again. The good thing is I could always blame him. You know, if I lose, I can say, well, it's your fault. You told me not to fold. So.
Well, Sam, you won the UKIPT Player of the Season and then the APT Player of the Year 4 years in a row. You were in really good contention to win a fifth in a row before it almost seemed like you pulled up short of the line. Why was that?
Yeah, I mean, in honesty, you know, I've been sticking. I mean, I've been out in Asia. You know, obviously, I met my now wife. She was playing on the APT as well. I met her there. She used to grind a lot of the cash games in LA because she lived there for 7 years, and so as I kind of migrating and staying here, and I was kind of following the Asian circuit and not really doing much of the traveling that I used to do. I won the first Player of the Year, and then I thought, well, you know, I've met this, you know, really gorgeous woman. I'm going to hang around, you know, for another year, and then I won it again, and then I think my OCD kicks in because I'm like, oh shit, I have to win it now. I just have to win it every year. I don't know why. So I won it the third time, then I won it the fourth, and by that time I'm like, I've literally missed quite a few events just to play the APT. And although I really love the tour and I love the people on it, it's like feels like home. I know that I haven't taken the shots that I should have done purely because I'm, you know, chasing Player of the Year. Like people are going off to Vegas for the World Series, and I'm like, I'll meet you in 2 weeks. I've got to go to Cambodia in the middle of nowhere to play for Player of the Year points. I felt kind of locked into it, and I'm always finding excuses to miss a stop. I missed like 4 stops, and I lost the race by the equivalent of, you know, the average amount of points I make in one stop. So, you know, I was looking for excuses because I thought, you know, if I don't win, I can breathe a sigh of relief, and it's like the chains are freed. But I mean, I should have just been like, whatever, because it's pretty ridiculous. I had a $10,000 side bet that someone made with me. He said at the Player of the Year party after I won the 4th one, he said, I bet you don't win it again. I said, well, if there's money on it, and I fancy my chances. So I had a 10k side bet, and I was standing to win like 12k for the Player of the Year race. So it's pretty sick that I just threw it away, but I just thought, you know, I really want to. I don't want to give up poker right now, but I want to be able to go out in my own conscience and say, you know, I'm going to go and play this. I can play the World Series. I want to play this big event, and I don't have to feel like I have to go chasing those points. And it's pretty sick because I should just be able to just win it and then not play it again, you know. But that's just not the way my brain works, sadly. So, yeah.
I ran into you in Vegas in the summer, where it seemed there's a lot more to your life these days than poker. Would you like to tell us what else you're up to these days?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I have a son who's 3 years old, and also she has a daughter who's nearly 14, and you know, they're beginning to grow up and see, you know, beginning to notice things and how life should be. So we decided we'd open a restaurant. So we opened a Mexican restaurant because I've been in. My brother's a chef. I knew we could get him out to help. I'm not unfamiliar with the restaurant background because my uncle had a restaurant and I worked there for like 5-6 years. So So it's not like I just blindly take my money restaurant business, So we thought we'd open something up just so that it gives us something to do. But my main focus is now I've decided is really going to be on the World Series of Poker every year. I really want to. I've never given myself enough shots. I've never given myself. I've stayed there for the full 6 weeks many times, but I've never really committed to playing. Every Hold'em event that there is on the schedule, and I think part of the reason, I should hopefully in my mind be able to justify. I'm missing a load of events throughout the year, so this is my 6 weeks to really try and work hard and make something. So that's going to be my main focus now.
Well, it sounds like you're really getting a grip on maybe a bit of family life, work-life balance. Now, before you go, I did want to ask you one final question. I guess I'm saving the controversial bit for the end. You recently came out quite negatively against PokerStars live events. How come you seem so angry with a brand whose tours have brought you so much success over the years?
Yeah, it's sad really, because it would have brought me. I'm pretty sure it would have brought me so much more success if they'd kept their morals in a sort of the same sort of line as my own. But it's a tough one. They do. It takes a lot for me to to speak out or write a blog about issues like this, bad mouthing people or companies. It really takes a lot, and there's a lot of things that have upset me, and it's a tough one because they play a great game, because all the live staff they employ are so friendly, and you get to know them so well. And I love the guys in Asia, the guys in Europe. I don't think I have a bad word to say about the live staff. And that's what makes them so clever, because there have been many occasions over the last few years that I've wanted to vent against PokerStars, but I've always felt like I'm almost attacking the friends and almost family that I've come to know, and so I've been silenced myself. I've silenced myself for fear of hurting those people that I've met over the years. And that's just a clever game that PokerStars play. But I think what they've done, I mean, I think it's nonsense. I mean, if one understands that they're really looking to do things in the best interest of their profits, and when you're doing that, to go and bullshit players that you're doing it in favour of recreational players, who now, I understand from PokerStars' point of view, the pro players are no longer the players that are going to provide them, their income, because that's, especially online, it's becoming kind of a dying game for pros. So they're looking to attack. I remember back in the past, all the perks we used to get as a so-called pro online because of the rake we were bringing in, because we played so many heads-up tables or whatever. But now they're really looking to attack another market, and to now just flip the boat on all those people that have supported them throughout the years, and come up with actually what really prompted me to write my blog about stars recently is I noticed you had retweeted, or Willie Elliott had retweeted something about the statement they made about the Stars online satellites, saying that some pros have taken advantage of this. And I'm like, okay, so a professional poker company who puts up blackjack and roulette and God knows what, that's not taking advantage of players that might have, a gambling problem or whatever. There's many things that I could think of that we could go on all night about. But to go and attack, I don't know whether they're trying to make excuses for the dip in numbers on their live events, or they're again trying to butter up the so-called recreational players. But their excuse is always, we want to improve the experience, a better experience. I'm like, put fucking casino games up there, and when people are doing their bollocks, they're going to do their whole roll on blackjack. I'm sure they're really enjoying that experience. I totally appreciate PokerStars as a business, And if they want to turn around and do something that's in the interest of themselves, then that's totally fine. But to try and go and do something that's in the interest of themselves and then try to pin it on the back of people that have made their living over these last X amount of years it's just utter nonsense. Utter nonsense.
Yeah, look, we really appreciate your candor on this one. It's obviously something. It was clear from your writing recently that it was something that you wanted to get off your chest. It's not easy to kind of put your head above the parapet on this stuff. I know it's something Dara and I have done historically, and it comes with mixed results. Some people respect you. Some of the players really are grateful that you've rallied in behind a perspective or maybe given a voice to what they've been feeling. But similarly, you make yourself a target too, and I do appreciate you putting your neck on the line here and voicing your concern. Well, look, Sam Razavi, controversial perhaps, entertaining always. We really appreciate you being on the show today. It's been a real pleasure having the chats and having some fun as well.
Yeah, no, it's been great catching up. It's been quite some time, apart from obviously the brief stint in Vegas that I saw you. But yeah, hope to catch up again soon.
Thanks, and hi to Seamus from Ireland.
He sends his regards.